Today we're diving into one of history's biggest military upsets, the Battle of Gergovia. This is a story about genius, total chaos, and a really rare, frankly stunning defeat for one of the greatest commanders who ever lived. You know, when you hear the name Julius Caesar, what comes to mind? Victory, right? I mean, the guy was a military genius, a brilliant tactician, an incredible leader. His legions seemed totally unstoppable as they were carving out a massive empire for Rome. His name is literally a synonym for success on the battlefield. But in 52 BCE, deep in the heart of Gaul, the unthinkable happened. That incredible Roman war machine, it didn't just stall, it got thrown into reverse. So the big question is, how did Caesar, the absolute master of the battlefield, get so completely outsmarted and outfought? Let's get into it. Okay, so to really get a grip on Gergovia, we first have to understand the bigger picture. This battle was part of a huge, brutal, sprawling conflict. We're talking about the final, most explosive years of the Gallic Wars. For years, Caesar had been on this relentless campaign, systematically conquering the tribes of Gaul, what we know today as modern-day France. It was a bloody, tough fight to bring the entire region under the heel of Rome. But, you know, the people of Gaul, they were not going to be conquered without one heck of a fight. And in 52 BCE, that resistance found its ultimate champion, a guy named Vercingetorix. He was this charismatic chieftain from a powerful tribe, and he did something nobody thought was possible. He actually united all these fiercely independent Gallic tribes into one massive army. He created a single, unified threat aimed squarely at Caesar. So after a really brutal Roman victory at another siege, Caesar decided to march directly for the heart of the rebellion. His target? Gergovia, the capital of Vercingetorix's own people. This wasn't just strategic anymore. Now, it was personal. Now, what's really interesting here are the numbers. If you just look at it on paper, the forces seem pretty evenly matched. Caesar's got about 25,000 men, these are veteran legions, while Vercingetorix is commanding around 30,000 warriors. But here's the thing, Vercingetorix had a massive ace up his sleeve, and that was the battlefield itself. He decided to make a stand at Gergovia, which was a classic Gallic oppidum. Now, don't just think of this as a fort. Think of it more like a fortified city, a huge political and symbolic center perched way up high on a plateau. Taking it wouldn't just be a military win for Caesar. It would be a crushing blow to the very soul of the rebellion. And this just perfectly illustrates the insane challenge Caesar was facing. I mean, Gergovia was a natural fortress. It's sitting over 700 meters above sea level, with a nearly 300-meter vertical drop on its steepest sides. A direct assault was basically suicidal. Vercingetorix had chosen his ground perfectly. So Caesar knew a frontal attack was completely out of the question. He needed a plan, a clever, really intricate strategy to try and lure the Gauls out of their untouchable position. And what he came up with was brilliant. But, you know, a brilliant strategy means nothing if you can't execute it with discipline. Okay, so here was Caesar's four-step master plan. First, create a big, noisy diversion with his cavalry on one side of the hill to get Vercingetorix's attention. Second, while everyone's distracted, secretly move his legions to a weaker, less defended part of the Gallic lines. Third, launch a super-fast surprise attack on their outer camps. And fourth, and this was the most important part, sound the retreat before the main Gallic army could show up and counterattack. It was a classic hit and run. And at first, it worked like a charm. Caesar himself actually wrote about the moment he saw his chance, noting that the enemy hill was suddenly stripped of men. The Gallic warriors were all rushing off to the diversion. The trap was set. So the Roman attack begins. They storm the outer Gallic camps with just stunning speed. The Gauls are caught completely off guard. The Romans achieve their objective almost instantly. And that is the exact moment where it all went completely sideways. So what went wrong? Well, it was a total breakdown of command. Caesar ordered the trumpets to sound the retreats, but in all the noise and chaos of battle, they were never heard. His legionaries, they're flushed with victory, they're eager for glory, and so they just totally ignore their officers and charge straight for the city walls. This was the moment Vercingetorix was waiting for. He wheeled his main force around and launched this ferocious counterattack from the high ground. And to make everything a million times worse, Roman reinforcements, their Gallic allies, the Aedua, show up. But in the panic, the Romans mistake them for the enemy. A difficult retreat instantly turned into a full-blown, chaotic rout. The battle was over. The Romans scrambled back to the safety of their camp, leaving their dead all over the slopes of Gergovia. For Caesar, it was time to count the cost, and not just in lives, but in his reputation and his whole strategic position. 46. That's the number of centurions that Caesar himself admitted to losing. And these weren't just soldiers. They were the veteran commanders, the absolute backbone of his legions. To lose this many in a single fight, a quarter of all the centurions he had there, was a catastrophic blow to his army's experience and morale. Officially, Caesar reported losing over 700 legionaries. Now, let's be real, Caesar was a master of political spin, so it's highly likely he was downplaying those numbers. Some estimates think the Roman casualties could have been in the thousands, but whatever the exact number was, it was a clear, undeniable defeat. In his official reports back to the Senate, Caesar placed the blame squarely on the rashness and eagerness of his own soldiers. He was controlling the narrative. But was it just spin, or was there some truth to it? Maybe it was a genuine critique of a Roman military culture that was prone to what some call victory fever, this tendency for soldiers to get carried away and push too far in the heat of a successful attack. Whatever the reason, the reality on the ground was stark. Vercingetorix had handed the supposedly invincible Caesar a major defeat, and this shattered the myth of Roman invincibility for all of Gaul to see. The ripple effects were immediate and huge. Gallic morale just skyrocketed. Even Rome's most important allies in the area, the Aedui, the very same ones who were mistaken in the battle, they defected to Vercingetorix's side. Caesar had no choice. He had to abandon the siege, link up with his other legions, and retreat. Gergovia had completely changed the war, setting the stage for one final, winner-take-all showdown at the fortress of Alesia. So, what's the big takeaway from this rare Roman failure? I mean, why does this one battle, fought over 2,000 years ago on a hill in central France, still captivate us so much? Well, the defeat wasn't because of one single thing. It was a perfect storm of factors. You had Vercingetorix's brilliant use of the terrain, the incredible natural defenses of Gergovia itself, that fatal breakdown in Roman discipline at the worst possible moment, and, the simple fact that the Gauls were fighting with the passion of people defending their own homes. It's also really important to remember where this whole story comes from. Our main source is Caesar's own book, his Commentaries on the Gallic War. So we're basically reading the story of the defeat as told by the general who lost. He had every reason to frame it as a failure of his men, not a flaw in his own grand strategy. And that leaves us with one last big question. Was Gergovia just a fluke? A brilliant plan that was just undone by a moment of chaos and human error? Or was it something more? Was it a masterful victory, engineered by Vercingetorix, that truly exposed the limits of even Caesar's legendary genius? It's a question historians are still debating today, and it's what makes the Battle of Gergovia such an absolutely fascinating moment in history.